Hey y'all, hey. It's your girl Morgan Renee trying to get set up on my Instagram as well as my Facebook. Bring Instagram a little closer. Alright, so here we are for another story time with more of my. Let's pray the phone doesn't overheat. I'm in the shade, but I guess it just be getting too hot when I'm outside. Ready to get back into this book, Trying to Sleep in the Bed You Made by Virginia D. Berry and Donna Grant. We are on chapter 7. I'm just going to hop right into it, okay? Just seeing stars is the quote to start off with. Be sensible, Gail. The man says he owns a business. You're a sales girl. Now what does he want with you? Joseph yanked the paper napkin from his shirt neck and tossed it in his egg-stained plate. I'm assistant manager, Daddy, and you know what you're talking about. Gail tore a biscuit into jagged bits and dropped them in her dish. I know there's only one reason a 30-year-old man is sniffing around you, Gail Denise Saunders. He rubbed the flat of his hand over his bald head. Soon as he gets what he came for, he'll be wagging his tail and heading on down the road. Ramsey's not like that. He's been a gentleman and he treats me like a lady. You don't know him like I do. Gail flipped the pages of the Sunday News that lay on the table. Since their roadside rendezvous, Ramsey Hillard has shown Gail a New York worlds away from the one where she grew up. He would arrive at her door with a charming greeting for Loretta, a firm handshake for Joseph, and one perfectly curly rose for her. Then he would escort Gail to that big silver car, and once she was ensconced in plush leathery comfort, Gail felt transported to another galaxy. Over a candlelight dinner, 104 stories in the sky with Manhattan a jeweled carpet twinkling below, Ramsey held his hand and told her about his business, commercial and residential landscaping. Gail hung on every word like it was an ancient truth and relished the procession of waiters who seemed to anticipate her every need. Perched on a bar stool at Sardi's after Ain't Misbehaving, Gail loved the caricatures of celebrities on the walls and the way people noticed them and nodded like they must be somebody. Ramsey sipped Southern Comfort and mesmerized her with his story of growing up in Kentucky on a dirt road in the shadow of horse country wealth. After he scraped together enough money for an old car, he moved to Louisville, lucked into his landscaping business, and moved north. Gail wondered how he was so lucky, but she didn't interrupt his storytelling. Ramsey's rich baritone loitered over words, and his eyes lingered over her. When he brushed her hair away from her face, Gail felt the heat from his palm sear her cheek, and although she barely sipped her wine, Gail felt intoxicated. Gail had dismissed Billy Eckstein as some relic of her parents' youth, but pressed up next to Ramsey, enveloped in the smoky haze of the blue note, body and soul spoke to her. When that velvety voice crooned, I am yours for the taking, Gail melted inside. The man is a con artist or a simpleton one if he can't find a woman his own age. Joseph turned up his coffee cup and peered at Gail over the rim. She met her father's gaze. You just don't think your little girl could possibly have anything to offer a man, do you, Daddy? Yeah, you got something to offer. That's what I'm worried about. Joseph reared back in his chair. What about Marcus? What about Marcus? Gail got up and stacked dirty dishes. He called a week and a half after the blow-up, acting like nothing happened and like she really cared that the Ariel's first baseman was out with tendinitis. He called again yesterday, said you didn't call him back. That's because I didn't. Marcus is still a child, Daddy. He plays the game for a living. Pat was right. I needed somebody to compare him to. All I know is Marcus didn't make you forget how you was raised. After 2 weeks, you come home wearing jewelry from this man. For crying out loud, he wears a diamond pinky ring, Gail. You didn't go to church last week because you were out too late Saturday night. Now you're going to, what'd you call it, champagne brunch? What kind of man takes a woman drinking on a Sunday morning? You answer me that. I guess the kind I like. She subconsciously fingered the gold star suspended from a delicate filigree chain around her neck. Joseph rifled the paper for the sports section. Gail piled dishes in the sink and turned on the hot water. The kind of man who always knows exactly what to say and do. Suds filled the sink and she poured bacon drippings into the old Crisco can next to the stove. Ramsey was a man, not an awkward, insecure, unsophisticated boy. Every movement, every decision was quick and sure. Most of the time, it was like magic. As they walked crowded city streets, his arm would slip around her waist and make her feel secure. He seemed to know what she would like and ordered for her in restaurants. He'd open doors, guide her through, and whisper something funny all at the same time. The warm, moist, close-scented voice in her ear always caught her off guard and made her breathe in tiny, shallow ripples that left her dizzy. And when she was with him, he made her feel like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. "You fixing to wash the floor too?" Joseph asked. Bubbles slipped quietly over the edge of the sink, and Gail jumped to turn off the water. "Why didn't you say something?" "Are you two still at it?" Loretta appeared in the kitchen door, dressed for church. "Joseph, leave the child alone. She's young, she should have fun, and Mr. Hiller seems like a fine man." "Having money and fancy ways don't make him a fine man, Loretta. And just because he kisses your hand and tells you how pretty you look doesn't mean he ain't a scoundrel." Joseph stood and pressed his hand to his chest. "What do we have for heartburn?" "I told you not to put hot sauce on your eggs, Joseph, and all that slab bacon." "I'll get it." Gail was happy to have an excuse to leave. "You look mighty fine this morning, Mrs. Saunders. New dress?" Joseph said. "What do you want, Joseph?" "Exactly. When I pay you a compliment, you're suspicious. That's how I feel about this Ramsey character." Gail returned, plopped 2 tablets in a glass of water, and handed the bubbly concoction to her father, who drank it straight down. "Let's go." Joseph got his suit coat from the back of the kitchen chair and walked out the back door. Loretta secured her blue straw cloche hat with a pearl top pin. She turned to Gail, smoothed her thumb over her daughter's right eyebrow, and started to speak, but instead cupped Gail's chin in her hand for a long moment, then headed out the door. Loretta secured her Gail watched through the window. "They're getting old." When she was little, she asked why they were older than her friends' parents. "God bless us a little later," her father said. He still had spring in his step, but he used to eat whatever he wanted and then some with no complaint. And Gail had noticed the gray roots sneak up on her mama's auburn curls if she missed her special appointment at Della's. Gail just hadn't thought about it much. Gail watched her father back the car into the street. It's always the same. Most Sundays for her whole life, they rode into the city with her father, fussing about finding a parking space. When she and Pat were kids, a ride anywhere promised adventure. But Pat was gone, Gail was grown, and riding to church with her father complaining about his indigestion, and her mother retelling hairdresser gossip was boring. They've been doing this almost 35 years. They were planning to renew their vows for their anniversary, and they both were excited about the wedding and reception because they never really had one. When was the last time they had anything to be excited about? When they bought the house? When I was born? But it would be different for her. Thanks to Ramsey Hillard, it already was. She trotted upstairs to get ready. Won't everybody be surprised when I show up at the anniversary party with him? When the doorbell rang, Gail raced to answer. She smoothed a hand over the full skirt and her ivory silk shirt dress and turned the knob. Marcus leaned against the banister. "I thought you might be at church, but I stopped anyway because I ain't got much time." "Then don't spend it here because I don't have much either." Marcus had to be gone before Ramsey showed up because she hadn't rehearsed this scene yet and didn't know how it would play. Marcus frowned. "Yeah, can I come in or we going to talk through the screen door?" Gail shrugged and let him in. "Make it fast, Marcus. I'm on my way out." She crossed her arms and waited. Everything about him annoyed her. His gum chewing, the tired leather jacket, his sneakers, and most of all, his attitude, like showing up would make her day. "Well," Gail tapped her foot impatiently. "I'm moving up to AAA, Rochester. I report today." He shoved his hands deep in his pockets. "That's nice. What does this have to do with me?" "Like you don't know." Marcus eased toward her and put a little sugar in his voice. "Why you want to act like this? It means that maybe the season ends, I'll make the show. And then, you know, what we always talked about. I'm through talking about you, Marcus." And she looked out the door and saw Ramsey pull up. "And I think you should go." Marcus examined her closely. "What's that around your neck?" "What does it look like?" Gail touched the star on her throat. "I know what it is. Where did it come from? And how come you're not wearing the ring I gave you?" "How's my lady today?" Ramsey stood at the screen. I'm fine, Ramsey." Gail opened the door and Ramsey leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. "What the?" Marcus sputtered. "I told you I was on my way out, Marcus." "So when were you going to tell me, Gail?" "I don't know when I was going to tell you." She didn't even know what she was going to tell him. She hadn't planned to have to make that move so soon. "Marcus, he gave you that necklace, didn't he? So this how it's going to be? Is there a problem, young blood?" Ramsey asked. Marcus looked Ramsey up and down, checking out the expensive pinstripe suit and well-shined floor sheen. "Not until now, Not until now, Pops. I'm ready, Ramsey. Gail felt like all the blood in her body had rushed to her head and pulsated between her ears. She grabbed her jacket from the doorknob. Let's go. You gonna act like I'm not here? Marcus tightened his jaw to his dimple twitch. Fine. Ramsey, this is Marcus Carter, an old friend of mine. He plays minor league baseball, and he just stopped by to say hello. Gail's voice echoed in her head. Ain't this some shit? Marcus threw up his hands and paced in the small hallway. Ramsey stepped in Marcus's path. You should watch your language. And I don't need you telling me what to do. Marcus and Ramsey stood too close to blink. The next 10 seconds felt like an hour to Gail. Beads of sweat dotted Marcus's forehead and fire blazed in his eyes. Ramsey stared back, cool, confident, immovable. Then Marcus backed up slowly and faced Gail. Is this how you want it? Gail swallowed hard. I don't know. Oh, Gail swallowed hard. I don't know. Yes. Bet. Marcus punched the screen so hard the restraining arm snapped and the door banged against the railing. Halfway down the path, he turned back toward the house. I thought we had a dream, Gail, but evidently you was just seeing stars. Marcus stabbed the air with his index finger. Gail felt every word pierce her skin. Part of her wanted to run to him, say she was sorry, but she made her bed. Marcus screeched off in the Nighthawk, burning rubber. Without looking at Ramsey, she said, he was my boyfriend. He left to play baseball for the Orioles. We broke up before I met you. And a month ago, I was planning to marry him. Can we go? An instant of panic washed across her face. Ramsey could see she was on the verge of tears. Let's get out of here, pretty lady. Gail jabbered nonstop to ward off Ramsey's questions and her thoughts about Marcus. Occasionally, she sneaked a glance at him, noting the way his sideburns curled slightly into his ear, or the way he drove, staring with only a finger looped casually over the wheel. Of course this is where I want to be, with him. They drove way beyond the Bronx. When Ramsey parked in front of a rundown warehouse on a desolate-looking block and opened the car door, Gail hesitated to get out. You trust me, don't you? Ramsey held out his hand. I don't know. Should I? Gail tilted her head down and peeked up at him. Without question, Nightingale. Ramsey winked and looked into those sparkling almond eyes. Gail swung her legs out of the car and Ramsey eyed those sweet feet perched on dainty black patent sandals. She took his hand and he led her carefully over the gravel and broken glass that littered the sidewalk and rapped 4 times on the battered steel door. It creaked open slowly, and a hulk of a man in a white dinner jacket with a nose that hooked like an eagle beak and a head as shiny and smooth as an 8-ball nodded to Ramsey and graciously waved them inside. Gail was astonished. The sugary scent of magnolias and barbecue sauce filled with her first breath, and bouncy ragtime piano accompanied laughter and the tinkling of glasses. White sheer draperies obscured the rusty bar windows, and a massive chandelier dripping crystals dangled 2 stories above their heads. You looking mighty prosperous today, Mr. Hillard. Business must be good. His waxed and curled handlebar mustache broadened his already wide grin. Everything's good, and I'm planning on keeping it that way. Ramsey clapped the center of the man's back exuberantly and turned to Gail. Bessie, I'd like you to meet Miss Gail Saunders. Gail smiled and offered her hand, which Bessie took by the fingertips as he bowed low. It's always my pleasure to have a beautiful woman grace my humble establishment. Gail thought that being greeted by name in a restaurant only happened in the movies. But it was like that with Ramsey all the time. Not like with Marcus. When people looked at them, they didn't have enough money to pay. The hostess, a full hourglass with the time to spare, knew Ramsey too. Her red-fingered flapper dress shimmied dizzily as she led them past the carved mahogany bar, overseen by 2 snowy cockatoos in a gilded cage, snaked through tables crowded with well-dressed brunchers, and stopped in front of a pair of lush emerald velvet drapes. She pulled a golden cord, which admitted them to the most illicit ambiance of a private booth. Once they settled into the curve of the richly upholstered banquet, a waiter in black tails and spats appeared. Ramsey ordered vintage champagne. The stuff that comes with brunch tastes like swamp water. Lots of folks don't know the difference, but I know quality. He knows so much. And Gail felt primed to learn. In all the years with Marcus, what had she learned? That a tie on the bases went to the runner. Who cared? Ramsey taught her about champagne and secret places. He didn't just promise, he delivered, and she wanted it all. He made her feel like a woman. The man at the door, is his name really Bessie? Ramsey stroked his mustache with his fingertips. His grandma's name was Bessie, and she ran a speakeasy during Prohibition. You know, gangsters, bootleg whiskey, whatever your hand called for, you could find it at Bessie's. His daughter, Bessie, turned the place into a legitimate nightclub, and when she had a baby boy, instead of a daughter, they called him Bessie too. You know, his name, wait a minute. They call him Bessie too. You know, he named his son Bessie. Nobody laughs when they say it either, and Bessie makes the best ribs and potato salad you ever put between your lips. How'd you find this place? Gail asked. The same way I found you. Just lucky. But I always have my eyes open for good things. Ramsey fanned Gail's napkin open and draped it across her lap. Actually, I don't live far from here, and I drove past this place for a couple of years and had no idea. And you have to know. Anyway, I met Bessie at the Urban League, gave him my card, been sending a crew to his house twice a week ever since. Now that's a house. Gail loved the way Ramsey talked. He still had a hint of a drawl, but instead of sounding country like she thought other people did, Ramsey's voice lapped over her like a warm bubble bath, and he always had a story to tell. I wonder what Ramsey's place is like. The waiter tinkled the small brass bells suspended at the drapery opening to signal his arrival. Then he pulled the drapes and, with well-rehearsed ceremony, uncorked the champagne, poured 2 glasses, and rested the bottle in a silver cooler and withdrew. To Luck and the lady who brought it. They clinked glasses and sipped. The taste, a tangy, effervescent sweet and sour, surprised Gail. I have to get used to the good stuff. She put down the flute glass and focused on the delicate bubbles rising to the top. I'm sorry about what happened. Forget about it, Nightingale. Ramsey caressed her cheek and drew her so close his mustache tickled her lips as he spoke. I have. First, he kissed her between the eyes, which she closed, waiting for his tingly touch. Then he kissed her chin. Gail's breath hung with anticipation. Finally, he found her mouth and kissed her, just long and deep enough to leave her wanting more. They ordered and ate in a kind of languid luxury. Gail had eggs, Bessie, 2 poached jumbos and big rounds of country ham on huge buttermilk biscuits, smothered in hollandaise, spiked pink with Tabasco. She could eat it and remain ladylike. Ramsey had it all. Barbecue, collards, cornbread, and more, piled high on a platter-sized plate. He fed Gail a taste of the spicy pork, wiped a spot of sauce from the corner of her mouth with his pinky, and relished the sauce he licked from his finger. While they drank coffee, Bessie stopped by the booth, and Gail excused herself to the ladies' room. That's quite a little filly you got with you today. Still looks kind of young and skittish. You think you can ride that? He rested his hand on Ramsey's shoulder. Just leave me to that. The men chuckled. Anything I can do for you today? Bessie asked. No, I'll be by later in the week. Bessie smiled and retreated when Gail got back. She and Ramsey finished their coffee, and by the time they emerged from the booth, only a few stragglers remained, conversing in murmurs around cluttered tables. The dusky colors and amber light of their private chamber had lulled Gail into a sense of time and space that gelled around them like sweet, thick blackberry preserves. She was startled by the brilliant sunshine when she stepped out of Bessie's world and back onto the street. Everything seemed hollow and so far away. Her parents, St. Albans, the feminine boutique, even Marcus. Everything but Ramsey seemed like distant, dusty recollections. She heard the crunch of gravel beneath her feet, but she felt like she was floating, and she didn't want the feeling to end. Ramsey, I'm having such a good time. I'm not ready to go home yet. We could go for a drive up to the Hudson. He unlocked the car and ushered Gail in. We could stop by my place, listen to some music. He closed the door and walked around the other side. The piney musk of his aftershave lingered. Gail inhaled so deeply she could taste it and could hardly wait for him to get in beside her. I like that, Gail said, and when she settled behind the wheel and covered her hand with his, she felt as if she stopped breathing until he pulled into the cool darkness of the garage beneath his building. As they rode the elevator to the 14th floor, she had no plan, only an aching longing for the next sensation. Then Ramsey unlocked the door and led her into his domain. The rest became a blur. They did some talking about the dusky Hudson River panorama framed by ceiling-scraping ficus trees that bracketed the far wall of his living room, about the furniture, all burl wood and clubby comfort just the way he'd seen it in the showroom, just like the rooms he was forbidden to enter when he was a boy, sent from the stables up to the house with some message. He'd even bought the painting of horses grazing in a paddock. It hung above the turf saddle leather sofa where Gail perched, trying to listen to what he said when he went to the kitchen for ice, but she couldn't hear him because she couldn't breathe. There was no air until he sat next to her. She leaned in close because she couldn't help it. She was dizzy from the yearning and wanted Ramsey to breathe life into her, now. Ramsey traced the star at the hollow of Gail's throat. You know I want you, Nightingale. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. His index finger meandered up to her chin, lightly traced her lips. But I never take you someplace you don't want to go. Gail inhaled him with her eyes, her ears, her skin. I want you too. Ramsey lifted her onto his lap. First time, isn't it? Are you using something? Uh-huh. Last week she started back on the pill, just in case. Look at them eyes, like 1,000 fires burning just for me. He memorized her body with his hand, outlined her face, the slope of her neck, her shoulders, and Gail closed her eyes and traveled with him. He unfastened each of her buttons, slowly, reverently. I can reconnect. My phone overheated and we're at the end. Okay, I don't know what's going on. All right, let's finish this. All right, so he said, Ramsey lifted her onto his lap. First time, isn't it? Are you using something? Uh-huh. Last week she started back on the pill, just in case. Look at them eyes, like 1,000 fires burning just for me. He memorized her body with his hands, outlined her face, the slope of her neck, her shoulders, and Gail closed her eyes and traveled with him. He unfastened each of her buttons, slowly, reverently, then continued on his journey. Gail's whole body felt new to her in a man's hands, and she shuddered, reached out for him, held his face in her hands, and looked him eye to eye, so close they breathed the same air, in and out, until she was drunk with it, until he raised her in his arms and carried her to his bed like something precious that he was damn lucky to find. He cherished her tenderly, pleasured her slowly, judged her by gasps and whispers, but she was ready for more until she had it all. And when it was over and she clutched the sheets and cried, Ramsey held her, rocked her until she was quiet, until she exhaled a breath both satisfied and exhausted, then turned and looked at him, eyes shining, and he knew she was his. The next day, while she logged in a shipment of gauze tunics at the store, she savored her entry to womanhood. Maybe I'll call Pat, but Gil decided to wait. Pat'll be home in a few weeks anyway for Mom and Daddy's anniversary party. By then, Gil was sure she'd have even more to tell about Mr. Ramsey Hillard. All right, young girls growing up, being fast. All right, that's the end of Chapter 7 of Trying to Sleep in the Bed You Made. If you have not already, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Morgan Myers. Or type in Storytime with Moramai. You'll see the red logo with the yellow M inside for my brand, Moramai. And catch up on all the past readings of this book and other books that I've read by other Black authors. All right, I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I'll be reading to you again soon. All right, peace.